we start with McLaren, second week in a row that we're dealing with drama with McLaren. Last time, we're talking about them blowing what should have been a win, right? Mm-hmm. This time, they get a 1-2. They get a maximum amount of points, except they didn't because George Russell got the fastest lap. So that's not the maximum amount of points. It's just one shy of it, though. So pretty damn good. Mm-hmm. They seem to be on a plan, Tim. And for anybody that didn't fully catch the race, undercut was enormous here. If you pitted first, you got an enormous advantage. They had 1-2 with Piastri. Piastri was well up ahead. Norris pits first, even though we all kind of thought it would be Piastri that would pit first, and Norris would protect the lead. They put Norris there ostensibly to hold off Lewis Hamilton and potentially Max Verstappen, and then allow Oscar to jump in. But what happened was Norris got the jump because of the undercut, and Oscar came out and was within about 3.5 seconds of Norris, and actually got pretty close to him, and then hit a bit of gravel on, I think it was turn 11. And never quite caught up to Norris after that. And the team said multiple times, and this is what's crazy about the call. They were talking to Lando at the end, around lap 65, like, think about all the Sunday morning meetings. Think about all the times that this guy's helped you. Are you really not going to give that place back? Tim, what was the plan here, and how was it not executed?
Well, hearing from Andrea Stella, it really sounds like a big part of it was, protecting against Hamilton in the undercut, but also not putting a ton of pressure on the crew, like the team, to make sure that when Piastri was coming in from the lead, that there was a lot of pressure on the crew to make sure that they maintained that lead, didn't mess up pit stops, et cetera, et cetera. So by using Lando first, kind of getting everybody in the routine, I think, Andrea Stella could be possibly protecting the team a little bit on that one. Mm-hmm. Still quite strange. I mean, they ended up undercutting their own driver. Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You put yourself in a really difficult position by doing that. Obviously I think it was a mistake. Like, when any driver is in the lead, you always prioritize that driver over the second place driver. If they're running 4 and 5, you still prioritize the driver that's in front. If you're running 19th and 20th, you prioritize the 19th driver. You always prioritize the lead driver, right? You have to maintain track position, and you have to make sure that you're not fighting with your own team for points and victories and who's getting a point, who's not getting a point, because you put yourself in a really difficult position by doing that, where these are aggressive racing drivers. Mm-hmm. They're going to battle for whatever is left out on the racetrack. Playing the team game is not necessarily its priority number one. For McLaren, their mentality is team first. The drivers always need to maintain that mentality of team first. It's really hard to get a racing driver to do that. It's a selfish sport in that way, where as a driver, you always have to be giving your best performances, finishing in the best positions that you can get, right? Because you're only as good as your last race. And team principles, other teams are not going to remember what happened in, Spa 2022 when, you gave up second place for your teammate, even though you were in second place. No one's going to remember that. So aside from the fans, obviously, and us, so that for McLaren, that's a big thing for them, making sure that, it's team first, always a team first mentality. When they're saying, remember all the Sunday mornings, our conversations, part of those conversations are, whoever gets the lead maintains the lead, even if that means you have to give up position to that person. These are all agreements that are put in place before the race starts. That's why they have these meetings, and who agrees on it, right? If the drivers come to an agreement that's what they will do, then that is what is fair and what should be done. And I respect McLaren for doing that. And I respect the fact that they sit down and tell the drivers that. It lets everybody know where they are. It lets you all know that you're all on the same page and you're all working together. Because what ends up happening, if Lando Norris goes on to win this race, I don't know how much trust would be left with either Lando, with the team in Lando, with Oscar and Lando. The trust between those two drivers, I don't know if that exists if Lando doesn't give that up.
Yeah, and I think Lando ultimately bowed to that. What do you think he was trying to prove by pushing so far ahead?
I mean that, he was the faster driver, right? Like you want to show the team, hey, look, I'm the faster driver. Don't make me do this. But as a driver, it's a race victory, right? You're adding that to your resume. And
right. And he's only got one.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, Adam. Also on top of all that too, right? It's been a frustrating season for him. Like, he should have more. He really should. And that team should have more. McLaren should have a lot more victories this season. There are some that were, really thrown away on strategy. There are some that were thrown away because of, driving. And that's got to be a frustrating thing for Lando because he's thinking big picture. He thinks he can win this championship. I think he can win this championship too, to be perfectly honest with you, if things go the right way. But at the end of the season, if you get to Abu Dhabi and that race finishes and you're left with a 6-7 point gap, we're going to reference this race.
We are.
Right? We're going to reference this race. It's going to be a talking point from here on out if this thing gets even closer, which it probably will. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for Lando, Adam, like, that's his mentality. That's what he's thinking. He's thinking championship. He's thinking bigger picture. He's thinking catching Max Verstappen for that championship victory. And McLaren's thinking about constructors, the team, how finishing as high up in constructors as they can, making sure they get that money, right? Like, all of it. Like, they're thinking all of those things. They're not necessarily thinking drivers, right? I think next year they're going to be thinking drivers 100%.
Yep.
But, I mean, Adam, we'll talk about Max in a bit here, but I kind of agree with Lando on that front, where it's, you got to think about that drivers' championship.
You do.
So it's a tough spot, but then again, like, you can't break the trust between the two drivers because they're going to need him. Like, they're going to need Oscar. Lando's going to need Oscar. Oscar's going to need Lando at some point. Like, they're just going to need each other. And once you start breaking the trust between everybody, then you're in a really difficult position.
It's hard to rebuild that once it's broken, right?
Big time.
And
Big time.
It didn't seem like post-race, Lando and Oscar, I mean, Lando immediately went up to Oscar's car and they were talking, and then, during the Nico Rosberg interview, and like they seem to be okay. It seems like Lando's issue, if there are any issues remaining, and I'm sure they debrief them, Lando's issues would be with the team and the way the strategy was called.
Yeah.
And, we talked about it after Silverstone. This is a team that hasn't won a championship since 2008. And doesn't have the same pedigree that a Mercedes or a Red Bull would have. Mm-hmm. They don't have that. They were not running close to the top even last year. It was not, they had a couple of bright spots and the car looked a lot better. But and the year before, I mean, I know they had a third place finish a few years ago. But this is a team that really and truly is learning right now how to win and going through growing pains. The thing about growing pains is they're unavoidable. You're going to make mistakes. Yeah. But to me, it's one of those things where, Tim, if they don't start learning from these mistakes, they're going to have some issues. And you see how even a relationship as good as Lando and Oscar, and there's never been anything about those two not getting along, how fragile that can be at this level because there's just so much at stake. Nicholas
Egan, so at Red Shark Pack, asks, is this the worst feeling a 1-2 finish of all time in F1?
I think multi-21 might be the worst one still.
But as a McLaren fan, Adam, let's just say as a McLaren fan, right? Like, because that's why I'm putting this question to you, because it's a good question because like, if you're a fan of both drivers or you're a fan of the team, I mean, you're probably feeling that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it was a little bit like, man, what makes me sad is that Oscar had that hanging over his first win. Like I was watching with Natalie last night because my wife Natalie, because we have a child we couldn't watch during the race. We had to wait until she went down. So we watched the race, and she said, "Isn't it a shame that he's got to deal with all these questions, right after winning his first race?" When Lando, who won his first race a month ago, there was like an outpouring of joy across the grid. And Lando deserved that. So did Oscar, though. And it's just a bummer that it happened that way. I think, though, Tim, both of these guys know that they're going to win more races. Both of them will win more races, probably this year. And so it's a learning experience. Where it becomes an issue is when you end up with Nico and Lewis, with Mercedes, or you end up with Fernando and Lewis, or Fernando and Esteban, where these issues happen. We deal with them in the debrief, right? And then we don't move on. We continue to make the same mistakes. That's when you get fractious relationships. And obviously, there are other times where, a guy like, Max versus anybody that he's raced with the exception, I think, of Daniel, has basically broken them based on his performance. He's just a tough guy to go up against. I just think, Tim, when I look at the way that McLaren handled this, I'm not surprised they're running into issues. I think that they got to learn quickly, and that the jury's out on that. We don't know if they're capable, but if they want to win a championship, they're going to have to learn. So
we have 2 more questions on this subject that I just want to throw to you, Adam. I mean, obviously, like, you're a big fan of the team, so I mean, this is a great subject for you.
I think we'd be here talking about McLaren winning races, and no.
At Breeds Love wants to know. She's a big fan of McLaren. Thrilled for Oscar, but that call should never have happened.
Which call?
I am thinking the call for Lando to move over.
Right. Yeah.
What do you think?
I think if Lando has the race lead after turn 1, it's a non-issue. It's a non-issue. Sure. You got to support the driver that's ahead.
Yep.
And Lando didn't have it. It was Oscar, it was Max, and then it was Lando. Yep. And so I think personally that what they did was they prioritized team over driver. And we have seen a lot of driver over team. We have not seen a lot of team over driver. And there's a lot of people out there going, yeah, Schumacher would have never moved. Vettel would have never moved. Hamilton would have never moved. Alonso would have never moved. I'm like, and most of that's true. I gained respect for Lando with that because this is a guy that is going to be with this team a long time, right? He signed a long-term deal.
Yep.
He wants to win with McLaren. Oscar is there to develop and win with McLaren. The whole point is to get these guys world championships with the, under the Papaya banner. So my respect for Lando actually went up because he did it. Because he threw a bit of a hey, F you. And then he did, okay, I'm going to do this. But just so we know now, we're racing for keeps. And I think that's fair. Yep. Oscar's got his first win. Lando's got his first win. If they repeated this same thing next week, Lando's not moving. And he shouldn't. Right? And I think that's what it's got to be now, Tim. It's got to be a little bit of, we got to push each other. And I think Lando's saying to Oscar, well, he's got to catch up. He wants me to pass him. He's got to catch up. He was on newer tires, Tim.
Last one for you before we move on. Hassam Salim asks, I honestly felt like the first win, high excitement from Oscar was taken away today. I have a feeling that Piastri felt so too. And I'm talking Gasly at Monza 2020 level of excitement. Piastri will never get this back. Would you agree, Adam?
I think that Oscar Piastri is also super understated. Like, Oscar Piastri is not going to yell yabba dabba do when he wins a race, as much as we want him to. As entertaining as that was when George did it, I think you want to have Yeah, I think you got to have expectations that Oscar Piastri is going to be just about the quietest race winner that you've seen in your lifetime. Like,
sure.
When was the last really understated guy to win a race? Like Mika Hakkinen was pretty quiet, right? That's the guy that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, that's a good one to think about for sure.
And that's
Kimi Räikkönen, maybe
Kimi, but Kimi had attitude, right? Kimi was a sassy man. He was like, shut up, don't talk to me, like that kind of guy. Whereas Oscar really is like, Kimi's not understated. He's just cold. Whereas Oscar is literally understated. Like, if you notice in the post race interview, he has a thing where when he's uncomfortable, he says it's either right or so. So he'll talk, and he'll be like, so yeah. There's a lot of so yeahs going on there. He's not comfortable in front of a microphone. Not used to it's funny for a guy with like literally the entire world watching him. He's not a guy that's really that comfortable in front of a bunch of people, except for when he's in a car. So
I find like when I get to sit down and talk to Oscar, I would say, it's been quite a few times. I've gotten to do that most recently in Canada. Mm-hmm. I find that like he's just like a normal dude. Like you just sit there and you can just talk, right? I don't really need to like formulate questions of getting to a specific. It's just you just can sit there and just talk. It doesn't feel like how did you feel about this?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not one of those. It's really just you're just having a rolling conversation, and he's very open in that respect. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just with me. Maybe it was because of our settings, surroundings, etc. I don't know, but I always find that with Oscar, I can just have just a normal chit chat with him, and usually it always turns out really great. But yeah, I'm a big fan of what Oscar does because he keeps it like this. There's no peaks. Yeah. There's no big peaks. There's no valleys. He's just like, he's like cool as a cucumber, right? Like he keeps it level, keeps it right in that medium zone. Doesn't get overly emotional. Doesn't get all the way down on himself. Tells you what's going on. And you know what? I respect that a lot. And, that's like, again, every driver has their way of getting to race wins, championships, etc. But for me, that's one of those ways that you get there.
I like that. Yeah, he doesn't get you never hear him complaining either.
No.